We're here today to talk about the Criminal Justice Reinvestment Task Force and the package of legislation that came out of that task force. And I'm proud to stand here today with colleagues and friends, the folks who are here, folks in the room, to announce a criminal justice reinvestment package that now I believe is in its final form after a lot of negotiations, a lot of meetings, a lot of hard work. We have a compromise package of bills. And I want to personally thank Director Pete Adams, if I can find you, there you are, from the Louisiana District Attorneys Association, Mike Renazza, who leads the Louisiana Sheriff's Association, as well as a number of individuals who've worked extremely hard within those organizations. For example, District Attorney Bo Dewey, who was also a member of the task force, Assistant DA Bobby Odenay, District Attorney Hiller Moore from here in Baton Rouge, District Attorney Ricky Babin, District Attorney Steve Tu. We had Sheriff Mike Cass from West Baton Rouge and Sheriff Craig Weber from Lafourche Parish, and many, many others. I also want to thank the legislators who worked so diligently on these bills, and many of them are here today as well. They've spent countless hours with my staff and the bill sponsors, reviewing the justice reinvestment legislation and coming to agreement on key changes that resolve their concerns. This compromise package contains smart, aggressive reforms that will certainly improve public safety, hold people accountable for criminal behavior, and reduce our state prison population by at least 10% over the next decade. The projected cost savings is 87% of the original package that was introduced by the Justice Reinvestment Task Force. That's $262 million saved over the next decade. We're also committing to reinvest more of the savings, 70% rather than 50%. If we achieve the savings we're projecting, that puts the reinvestment amount at an estimated $184 million over the next decade. Investments that will expand prison alternatives, fund programs in jails and in the community that reduce reoffending, and build up services that support victims of crime. So what's in the reform package? Well, we're making smart sentencing reforms, and that means eliminating some mandatory minimums, making more people eligible for probation and drug court, bringing our laws for drug and property crimes in line with other states, reducing habitual offender penalties, and eliminating life sentences for repeat nonviolent crimes. We're expanding the use of parole and good time and giving people more opportunities to earn time off of prison terms for participating in treatment and programming. We're also strengthening community supervision by using evidence-based sanctions and incentives, focusing supervision on the highest risk period of time, clearing away barriers to success that pile on debt beyond a person's means or that make it harder to get and keep a job, and much more. As you all know, the United States leads the world in imprisonment, and Louisiana locks people up at a rate nearly twice the national average. That's why we have the highest incarceration rate in the country. It is not because we have the most crime. Our crime rates are similar to most other states in the South. It's because of our policy decisions, the laws we put on the books, ratcheting up prison terms for all sorts of offenses. I know we can get more public safety bang for the buck. We have to. We're hemorrhaging money now in a system with a very high failure rate, and every failure means a new crime victim. The stakes are just too high. Dozens of other states have adopted targeted reforms like these that have driven down incarceration and crime, and I'm confident we're going to do the same. And I'm also confident that what we have been doing simply isn't working, and it's time to make a positive change, an evidence-based change. The District Attorneys Association and Sheriff's Association have been a vital part of this reform effort. They participated in the Justice Reinvestment Task Force, and they've worked closely with the legislature and my office to find a way to make this reform package work. I'm grateful for their partnership, their expertise, and their brainpower on this incredibly important issue. And I'm proud to stand with these folks today to announce this compromise package.
I've been here going on 23 years, and I've seen a pattern of conduct involving myself and a lot of other legislators, where we continue, every year we come up here, we create crimes, the next year we enhance the penalties, then we come with mandatory minimums, and then we come with truth in sentencing, and we take away good time, and then we tell Secretary LeBlanc, you handle them. And then when we call people in, and we look at them, and this is the 5th time that I've been up here in this building since we got sworn in last January. And every year, we're short of money. And we call in all these government agencies, and we look at what they do, and we see how we can cut. And we keep cutting, we keep cutting, we cutting. Well, today, I'm going to call on my colleagues to do something that they haven't done, that we haven't done. And I consider myself part of the problem too, because I've been here. And that's to turn around and take a look at what we do and grade our paper, because we cannot continue to do what we've been doing and survive. There are people, we can't fund TOPS, we can't fund higher ed, we can't fund medical services, but nobody ever looks at corrections. And I'm very proud to say that due to the efforts of the Pew Charitable Trust and the cooperation of the sheriffs and the DAs and the governor's office, we've been able to take a hard look at what we do. And believe me, I'm not blaming the DAs or the sheriffs. We've given them the tools to lock people up. We have the same crime rate as South Carolina, yet we incarcerate it 2 to 3 times that we do, that they do. And when we tell Secretary LeBlanc to make cuts, he can't cut people out of jail, so what does he do? He cuts programs. And so nonviolent people who are in jail, who might have the opportunity to avail themselves of some of these programs to maybe better themselves and get out a little earlier, are no longer able to do that. So we put bad and good people in jail, and we basically tell them, it doesn't matter whether you're good or bad, and when you get out, you're probably going to, well, hopefully you'll be good, but we can't offer you anything because we don't have the money. This is a first step, but a giant step, in my opinion, in trying to turn this thing around. We don't have to be the incarceration capital of the world. We don't have to incarcerate it 2 to 3 times. And we surely don't have to we need to make sure, and I believe the governor has done this, and the DAs and the sheriffs, the violent people need to stay in jail. But we need to increase our efforts to make sure that when someone goes in and does their time and they get out, that they're probably not going to be violent when they get out, because then they'll come right back in. I think 1 out of 3 comes back within the 3 years after they get out. So this is very important. These are the 3 bills that I'm handling on the Senate floor this afternoon are very important. I'll call them first steps. We've had some other bills that come up, but I think it's so important that we need to take a hard look at ourselves and say, you know what, rather than telling all these government agencies, you need to change the way you do business, it's time for us to focus on the criminal justice system and make sure that we're doing it in an efficient way that makes sure that bad people stay in jail and good people have a chance to rehabilitate themselves and get out and be productive citizens. And we need to give Secretary LeBlanc and the governor's office those tools. Thank you.
Again, thank you, Governor. Good afternoon, everybody. You know, I just want to mention that, you know, we still have a ways to go. Obviously, we have the Senate and the House side. And I don't want to forget about our House bills, because we have some work to do there, which will be either tomorrow or Thursday. But, you know, in my opinion, this is the biggest step. I've been in this business a long time, and from my standpoint, this is the biggest step that this state has ever taken in our history to move us forward and getting us out of that hole of being the highest incarceration rate in the world. And, you know, and the governor really put it in perspective in his comments. And I want to again thank Pew. As we know and have said, this is the most, in our history, we've never had the kind of data-driven criminal justice research that we've done over the last year. When this started a year ago, you know, it's kind of a dream to be standing here today, actually. And you know, we have compromise here, but again, I think it's a big step. You know, as chair of the task force, I want to take this opportunity to thank the task force members, to thank our community partners, to thank our chambers, our business community, thank our judges, our DAs, our sheriffs. This is a collaborative effort, and this kind of is a reflection of, if working together, this is what can be accomplished for our state. And as the governor mentioned, we're faced with budget cuts this year, and we don't have anywhere to go. I mean, these are the kind of things, if we don't make this kind of step in the right direction, we're faced with some very hard choices to make in the long run. I want to mention this, and on a DA standpoint, and working with this, and I want to thank Pete and the DAs. As a part of this with the lifers, there's about 40 lifers that when they were sentenced in the 70s, they had life with parole. They're still in this bill, and it's a fairness issue because when they were sentenced, they had life with parole, and they don't today. And I just, again, want to thank Pete and the DAs for working with us on that. And I think this is a good example of the kind of work that can be accomplished, hopefully set good examples for what can be accomplished down the road for our state. And lastly, the justice reinvestment part of this, for me, is certainly critical, and Representative Leger's bill that we'll be working on this week. We've had and had concerns when we went through the Office of Juvenile Justice with the Missouri model, and the money didn't get put in place. But we have a governor, we have a group of people, administration that's behind this. We feel like we have a good bill that will help us move this money in the right direction, and we are including OJJ in the reinvestment side of this, which I think is important to start eliminating that pipeline from our juvenile facilities into the adult facilities, and I think that's a key component of what we are trying to accomplish in this endeavor. So again, I want to thank the task force members, thank everybody and the governor for being a part of this.
First of all, I want to thank the governor and his staff, the secretary and his staff, and the key legislative leaders for working with the district attorneys to come up with something that we can make progress on and that protects the safety of the citizens of Louisiana. It's a balance, and I believe that what we have is a good product before us. The district attorneys throughout this process have been criticized by some as being opposed to all change, all of justice reform and all of sentencing reform, and it's just not true. From the very beginning, we participated in the task force. Even before the task force was formed, we worked with the Smarter in Crime folks and reformers to pass more than 30 pieces of legislation similar to what we're doing today. Maybe not as broad in scope, but similar. And the results have been a 9% reduction in our incarceration rate. Being number one in the world in incarceration rate is not something we're proud of as DAs. And we want to do something about that, but we wanted to do it in a manner that was responsible and that protected public safety. And we think what we've done with this compromise is achieve that balance. We told folks in the beginning that we thought we needed to focus on nonviolent crime. We think that the original package had a number of provisions that were contrary to that principle. We think that what we've done now is focus on nonviolent crime. But I do want to mention the exception that Secretary LeBlanc mentioned just a moment ago. There's a class of lifers who do not have an opportunity for parole, and they've been in 2019, all of them will have been in at least 40 years. And at one point in time, they had 40-year parole eligibility. And our district attorneys met, and as ministers of justice, we felt compelled not to oppose that being in the package. We just think it's fair that they should have parole eligibility at 40 years. They were once promised that. The law, by technicalities, deprived them of that. And we believe, as ministers of justice, we cannot, in good conscience, oppose that. So it is in the package. It is an exception to our violent and sex offender exception to the rule. I commend the package to you. I think it's reasonable. We are going to support the package. And I think that if it proves to be effective, if we're actually able to reinvest money into services, we can consider going forward further in future years. But again, thank you to all of you who worked with us.
Thank you, Governor, and thank you, Mr. Adams. And I appreciate where we find ourselves today. This is a moment in the history of the state of Louisiana where I think we can clearly say that we're shifting from legislating by anecdote to legislating by data and research. And that's what this has always been about to me. Over the course of the last almost decade of service here, this has been something that has driven me to continue to seek solutions to the challenges that face us. We could not have put together such an excellent task force report without the collaboration of the district attorneys, without the collaboration of the governor's office, the Department of Corrections, the sheriffs, the Supreme Court, the faith-based community, the business community. It required everyone coming together to put this task force report together in the first place. Now, this building is driven by a thing called votes. And so many of us would have liked to have gotten the entire package done, 100% of it. But in order to pass meaningful legislation, you have to have the votes necessary to do that. And so that's why countless hours have been spent by legislators, including Representative Joe Marino, who's been a huge asset in moving through some of these complicated issues, as well as district attorneys and other professionals. 87% is a huge accomplishment. Hundreds of millions of dollars saved, tens of millions of dollars that will be reinvested to make the quality of life of people of this state better. All of our priorities, every person here has a priority for public safety. And we've always looked at reform in that light. But we also recognize that what we've been doing hasn't been working. It hasn't made us safer. And so the reforms that we put in place over the next several weeks clearly, based on evidence and data, will give us an opportunity to have a safer state, to have a state that spends public safety dollars more appropriately and reduces the expenditure on things that take away from our society and invest it instead in things that build our society up. So I thank everyone that has been a part of this for their leadership, because without everyone pulling in the same direction, we simply just don't get there. And so I wish the best to Senator Martini on the Senate floor today, and look forward to bringing our bills forward over the next couple of days in the House and finishing up this session. So again, thank you.
I work for the American Civil Liberties Union, and I work in coalition with Louisianans for Prison Alternatives. We're seeking for rational solutions to our overcrowding, our mass incarceration problem.
Your reaction to the compromise announced here today?
I think today was a major breakthrough. I mean, to be quite honest, the bill package that was agreed to here today, I don't think goes far enough in my estimation, but it's the beginning of a process. You know, we're trying to make amends for 40 years of failed policy. It's not going to happen in one legislative session. What I think is perhaps the most significant thing that came out of today's press conference is the fact that the District Attorneys Association not only came to the table, agreed to these policy reforms, but also made a commitment to continuing to look at further policy revisions over time. So they recognize that this hasn't gone far enough either, and that we need to continue looking at solutions that will provide for a reduction in our prison population, but also maintain the public safety.